Alrighty, welcome to another exciting lesson of Pro Mandarin. Now you're probably wondering, who ate all the grapes in the fridge? And you're probably thinking to yourself, I wanted to eat that hamburger that was on the table. And who threw it away? And when did they do it? Well, if you want to be able to talk about this stuff in Chinese, you might want to watch the video. But first, you're probably thinking, can I learn all this Chinese in one lesson? Well, let's find out. Alright, let's get into this. So just like the other 是 and 的 methods, I explained that this grammar structure or the sentence structure is like a bookend style structure. It holds together the sentence, or at least what we find that's important in between the two. So just like the other one, I'm going to start off with a couple question words, and then we'll get into how to give answers as well later on in the lesson. So the first word inside is going to be 什么时候, which is when, as in when is something going to happen. And then we got 谁, which means who. And as you notice, there's a couple different pronunciations here. Some say 谁and others say 谁, but most people say 谁, and so that's the way I say it. And then over here on the left, we got 这, which means this, and 那, which means that. Now, in order to say this or that, followed by a noun, you have to put what's called a classifier before it. And in this case, we got 个 as a classifier. So the way you'd say this would be 这个, and then the way you'd say that is 那个. Now, you might be tempted to say something like this is by saying 这个是, or that is by saying 那个是, but it's actually more common to say 这是 or 那是. So why do I put 个 there then? Well, the only time that we're going to use 个 or any classifier is when we're going to actually say a noun right after it. So in this case, I'm going to show you the first classifier, 炖, and then the noun following it is 饭. So 饭 is a reference to food, and 炖in this case is a reference to meals. So in this case, we're talking about a meal of food, or a 炖 of 饭. So let me give you another example here that we're not going to use today, but I'm going to show you so you understand a little bit better about how classifiers work. If I said, give me a corn, you'd think, well, that sounds a little weird. But if I said, give me a can of corn, then you'd go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then if I said, hey, give me an ear of corn, now you're going, okay, I get it. Okay, so a can of corn, that's different than an ear of corn. Well, the can or the ear are the classifiers for corn. So we know what kind of container or dimensions or whatever it is that we're looking for of that type of thing. So with that, the next classifier is 碗, which means bowl, and then 面, in this case, means noodles. 面also has other meanings that has nothing to do with food. But if you were to say something like 这碗面, then you're saying this bowl of noodles. So then it'd be very clear what you're getting at. So again, the way you could think of it is 碗 of 面, or in other words, bowl of noodles. So if you're going to say this meal, you'd say 这顿饭. That meal, 那顿饭. Or you could say this bowl of noodles, 这碗面, or that bowl of noodles, 那碗面. Now, if I said 这个面, that would make it a little bit more confusing because, again, 面doesn't always have to do with food or even noodles for that matter. So if you meant to say something like this noodle, like maybe this noodle fell on the floor or something, you could say 这条面. So now I'm starting to describe things that has to do with that are long, skinny, windy kind of things by saying 条. So again, if I were to say something like this noodle fell on the floor, I could say 这条面掉到地上. 这条面掉到地上. Or here's another noun that goes along with 条, 这条路, which means this road. Or if I were to say 那条蛇, which would mean that snake. All right, now let me give you another one that goes along with 条 before we get rid of it. 这条领带, which means this tie. So I hope you get a better sense of what these classifiers do. And one other note that I want to give you about this, some of them you can mix and match. Not all of them, but some of them. So for an example, I could say this bowl of rice, or this bowl of food or something like that. I could say 这碗饭. Especially if I were to hold up a bowl that had rice, then people would know exactly what I'm talking about here, okay? Now I'm going to give you another word or another little phrase down below here, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of things you can do with it. But first I'll go ahead and say 桌子上的汉堡, 桌子上的汉堡. Or you could say 桌子上的汉堡. There's a little difference between the 堡 or 堡. One of them has a subtle hint of 儿化音, and the other one does not, which means the hamburger that's on the table. So the way I look at it is like this. 汉堡 is the hamburger, and then 的, that is, and then 桌子上 on the table, okay, or table on. So 桌子上的汉堡 means the hamburger that's on the table. Now I could use anything as a noun after that, because what I'm doing is I'm putting all the description just before de, and then I say the noun. So I could say 桌子上的东西, which would be the things that are on the table, as you see here. Or I could say 桌子上的沙拉, so the salad that's on the table. Or how about 桌子上的葡萄, the grapes that are on the table, and so on. But today we're going to use 桌子上的汉堡, okay? Now let's go ahead and go over the things that we can do with it. The first one is 做. So 做 means to do or to make, and in this case, since we're talking about food, we're going to use it to meaning to make, or another word, to cook, okay? Or however you want to talk about food, like to prepare something or something along those lines. And then we got 买, which means to buy, and then we got 吃, which means to eat, and then lastly we got 扔 or 扔掉, which means to throw away. So 扔 means to throw, but it's also used as a shortened version of 扔掉, which would mean to throw away. All right, let me give you an example here, and then we'll get you in some practice. So if I were to say who bought this meal, I could say 这顿饭是谁买的?这顿饭是谁买的? And of course, this is assuming that I already know that nobody actually made the meal, that we bought it instead, right? All right, let me go ahead and get you in some practice now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer it. If that's not enough time, you can always go ahead and pause the video. All right, so how would you say, when was the hamburger on the table purchased? 桌子上的汉堡是什么时候买的?桌子上的汉堡是什么时候买的? All right, now how would you say, who threw away that bowl of noodles? 那碗面是谁扔掉的?那碗面是谁扔掉的? And you can also use the shortened version of it as in 那碗面是谁扔的?那碗面是谁扔的? Now, there are other ways of saying things, and I do teach this in other lessons about the 把 method, which normally I would actually use that in this case. I would say something like 谁把那碗面扔掉了?谁把那碗面扔掉了? So the next one is, supposing that you knew that somebody made a bowl of noodles and you're wondering when was it made. So how would you say that? When was this bowl of noodles made? 这碗面是什么时候做的?这碗面是什么时候做的? All right, let's do a few more here. How would you say, who ate the burger that was on the table? 桌子上的汉堡是谁吃的?桌子上的汉堡是谁吃的? All right, now here's a little question for you. How would you say, when was that done? Or when was that made? Now, we're not talking about anything specific here as far as our list goes, but we are using the word that. So how would you say that? 那是什么时候做的?那是什么时候做的? So right there, I didn't use any classifiers at all. I could have said 那个是什么时候做的, but most of the time they don't. They just say 那是 for that is, or 这是 for this is, as I said before. And again, since I'm not using any nouns, I don't have to use any classifiers. All right, so for the next one, how would you say, who bought this? 这是谁买的?这是谁买的? All right, so let's go ahead and do one more before we move on to the next section. So how would you say, whose is this? 这是谁的?这是谁的? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next section. But before we do that, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like and subscribe, which really helps me out so that I can continue to make quality content like this video. All right, now back to the lesson. All right, welcome back. Let's go ahead and take out the middle section, and we're going to go ahead and add two sections in the middle here. So instead of asking questions, we're going to go ahead and give answers now. So in the first column, we're going to go ahead and go over the pronouns in Chinese. If you already know those, go ahead and skip ahead. If not, stick around. So first we got 我, which means I or me. And then we got 你, which means you. And then we got 他, which means he or him. And then we got 她, which means she or her. And of course, we also got 他, which means it. But we're not going to use that one because most of the time we don't do that in Chinese. And just to make a little note about it, I may use that in future videos so that way you know where Chinese people use it. but in today's lesson, we're not going to use it. All right, so in the next column, we're going to give some time frames. So first we got 昨天, which means yesterday. Then we got 前天, which means the day before yesterday or a couple of days ago. And then we got 几天前, which means a few days ago, which you can substitute the 几 for any number of days. For an example, 三天前, which would mean 3 days ago. But we're going to go ahead and use 几天前, so again, a few days ago. And then we're going to use 上个星期, which is one of the ways of saying last week. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get straight into the practice here, just because we've already had some idea of how this works. How would you say she made the burgers on the table? 桌子上的汉堡是她做的。桌子上的汉堡是她做的。All right, so then how would you say this meal was bought a few days ago? Maybe it's been sitting in the fridge, or maybe it's been sitting on the counter for a few days now. So how would you say that? This meal was bought a few days ago. 这顿饭是几天前买的。这顿饭是几天前买的。All right, I'm going to go back to the previous section just for a second by using the 什么时候 in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch something up just a little bit, and then I'm going to go right back to the lesson that we're already on. So let's say I'm specifying a specific set of noodles. It could have been a bowl of noodles or whatever, that doesn't matter. But the thing I'm trying to specify is where these noodles were at before and where I noticed that they are at now. Maybe I noticed they're in the trash, right? So I could say the noodles that were in the fridge. And so the way I could do that is say 冰箱里的面. So the 面 that's in the fridge or that was in the fridge, something like that. Then I could say 是什么时候扔掉的? Or in other words, when were they thrown away? So to put it all together, 冰箱里的面是什么时候扔掉的? 冰箱里的面是什么时候扔掉的? All right, so let's go ahead and try to answer that question. So how would you say, I threw that bowl of noodles out 2 days ago? 那碗面是我前天扔掉的。那碗面是我前天扔掉的。Now, if you were to just say, I threw it out a couple days ago, because we already know what we're talking about. Maybe somebody asked, where's that bowl of noodles? And I said, hey, I threw that out a couple days ago. Or I threw it out a couple days ago. We're not going to use 它 as in it just before the 是. We're just going to leave it off. So that's one of the reasons why I say most of the time they don't even use the 它 at all, especially not in this sentence structure and not in that way. So instead, I'll just say, 是我前天扔掉的。是我前天扔掉的。Now, what if I wasn't specifying myself? I was just talking about only the time frame. Then I could say, 是前天扔掉的. It could have been me or him or her or who knows who did it, right? It really doesn't matter. I'm just saying how long ago it was thrown away. So again, that's 是前天扔掉的. Now, I do want to show you a couple other things that you can do with this sentence, such as you can put 嘛 at the end and make this all a question, where you're not saying who did it or when did it happen. Instead, you're saying, did you do it? Or did he do it? Or something like that. Or was it done a few days ago? Something along those lines. So with that, let's see if you can figure out how to say, did you make this meal last week? So with this 嘛 at the end, how would you say that? 这顿饭是你上个星期做的吗？这顿饭是你上个星期做的吗？ Now, something that you might follow this up with is, you should probably throw it away. So the way you'd say that is, 应该要扔掉。应该要扔掉。Now, why am I not saying you in there? Well, because it's already referenced that I'm talking to you. And so I'm telling you, you should throw it away. Now, another way of saying it, and I don't want you to get confused with, oh, well, which one should I use? It doesn't really matter because they all basically mean the same thing. But you could say, 该扔掉吧, which this 吧 is making a suggestion here. And then the 该 is a shortened version of 应该. And then, of course, 扔掉, again, is to throw it away. Now, you could think of it as in it should be thrown away. And if you think of it that way, that's fine. The main thing is that you know that you're not going to say 它 as in it, okay? Again, it's rarely used compared to the way we use it in English. Now, one other way of saying this is by putting a 了 right before 吧. 该扔掉了吧? Now, in this case, it's kind of like saying it's about time to throw it away, or it's about time that it should be thrown away, something like that. So hopefully that little bit helps as far as when you're trying to give suggestions and things like that. Now one last example before I move on to the last section. If I wanted to say the burger on the table, or those burgers on the table are mine, I could say 桌子上的汉堡是我的。桌子上的汉堡是我的。So without the verb after the 谁 or the pronoun or whoever you're talking about, it makes it possessive. So 我的 becomes mine, 他的 becomes his or hers, 谁的 becomes whose, and so on. Now before we finish up, I'm going to go ahead and give you 4 questions that you can answer in the comments below. So the first question is, who bought the salad in the fridge? So how would you say that? And then the second one is, whose stuff is on the table? The third one is, who ate the grapes in the fridge? And then the last one is, he ate that bowl of grapes yesterday. So make sure you write those in the comments below. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, go ahead and 点赞、订阅和分享这个视频. Or in other words, like, subscribe, and share this video. And until next time, 下次见.